What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing good. It's always a beautiful, beautiful moment to have you with me. Thank you very much for stopping by. We are in Zimbabwe today. Zimbabwe, I'm sure you heard about it before. Beautiful place. Here's a map. Right next to South Africa, at the bottom of Africa. Depending on how you want to see Africa, whether it's the top of the bottom. I don't know. You tell me. So, the president of Zimbabwe has come forward saying the United States of America need to stop with the sanctions. They've been living under sanction for the longest years. They are tired. Okay, you know, when you punish people, I've learned that you don't punish people forever. Okay, it doesn't matter who it is. Your younger brother, younger sister, your wife. So I hope you don't punish your wives. Just kidding. You don't punish people for too long, because when you punish people too long, what happens is they can revolt. They have enough of it and they say, you know what, you do whatever you want to do. I think you can do it now. But if you punish just enough, you can teach somebody a lesson. Whether that's your child, right? If you want to teach your child a lesson, you direct them to the right direction very slowly. But if you push them to the corner, they may become rebellious. Now, Zimbabwe President Emerson Mnangagwa has again called for the removal of what he called unjust, illegal, and unilateral sanction on his country. The US imposed sanction in 2001 under the Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act following the country's land reform program in 2000, and also became the government-sponsored violence. So, what do they mean by that? The land reform was a program created by President Robert Mugabe. I don't know if you've heard of Robert Mugabe. Robert Mugabe, that's the man. Yes, that's the man. Fought very hard for the country many, many years ago. Zimbabwe was colonized by the British. Okay, you know, when they came in 1884, so you can understand. I know a lot of people from Jamaica, the Caribbeans, and the US who don't necessarily understand. So the all of Africa was colonized in 1884. And in 1884, before they came into Africa, they went to Berlin. They are Europeans. Yes, they went to Berlin, had to sit down and say, you know, fellas, we've fought each other for the longest time. Europe. Now we're all going to look for something in Africa. There are minerals and many other riches. Let's not go fight in Africa. Let's not go fight each other. Okay, so before we go to Africa and we end up fighting each other, let's sit down in Berlin and have a conversation and let's just cut Africa into small pieces. So they decided to cut Africa into small pieces. Many years ago, there never used to be countries in Africa. It was just one big land, massive land that had within its heart people, clans, tribes, different people, pygmies, Bantus, many, many people living together in peace. There was no country. There was no, I'm Nigerian, I'm Cameroonian, I'm Congolese, I'm Kenyan. No, none of that. That came in 1884 when the Europeans came to Africa and said, you know what? I'm going to take some part of African lands and that's going to be my land. The British took Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and other countries that was allocated to the British. The French people took Senegal, Gabon, Guinea, Congo, and many others. Togo, Benin, they made it French protectorate. So they came to Africa, two countries, and started serving themselves. They started looting the continent, taking gold, diamonds, and stuff, sending back to Europe. Now, in Zimbabwe was colonized by the British. Okay, British took over Zimbabwe, the rule over Zimbabwe for many, many years, beating the living crap out of Zimbabweans, poor brothers. Yes, sad story. Now, when the British came to Zimbabwe, they took over the lands too. So it wasn't just, we're going to colonize you. They took over the lands because Zimbabwe has fertile lands. They can actually have great agriculture. The British came and they took the land. When they took the land, many of them became farmers. So a very low number of British had more lands than the autochthones. You know, small number of British had more land than the local Zimbabweans. And the problem was, the British cultivated the land. They produced from the land. They sold to Zimbabwe and sometimes sold to Europe. And the money they acquired was never into Zimbabwean banks. Then when Zimbabwe got independence, they were still okay. The British were accepted. I mean, the descendants of the British that colonized Zimbabwe were still in the land of Zimbabwe. They were ruling over the country. They had more land than the Zimbabweans. Okay, they produced potatoes, tomatoes, and most other things that you can imagine. They made a lot of money out of it. Zimbabwe was reduced to consumers. However, they never banked with Zimbabwean banks. The money they made was sent back to Europe. Yeah. Then the president, Robert Mugabe at the time, said, hey, are you guys British or you are Zimbabweans? They say, we are Zimbabweans because we are born here. You say, okay, well, if you are born here and you say you are Zimbabwean, why don't you bank in Zimbabwe? Why do you send your money to Britain and other countries? Why don't you inject the money into the Zimbabwean economy so the economy can grow? Why are you being selfish if you truly are Zimbabwean? You see, I'm asking you to change that way of living. You need to change things. You need to start banking in Zimbabwe so Zimbabwe can be a decent country. Unfortunately, these people didn't want to listen. They continued sending money away, continued sending product, the best product of the land, different countries in Europe, not in Zimbabwe. So the Zimbabweans only profit from, the crumbs of not the best quality of life. The best quality went for exportation. And the President Mugabe did not like that. So Mugabe, of course, had many difficulties, he had many issues, but he truly wanted the good things of Zimbabweans. He decided to take the land back from the British colonialists to give it back to the local Zimbabweans. He took the lands and gave it to the people. Some of the British were compensated, but the majority of them did not get any, they got nothing. Because they say, we need to get money for it. They say, okay, by the time you came from Britain, at least when your grandfather came from Britain, he never paid any money for the land. He took it by force. So we are taking back our lands because it belongs to us. That's what happened. After that happened, Mugabe gave the land to Zimbabweans. The European countries and America were not happy at all. There's one thing, fella. These people stand together. Yeah, the Western nations stand together. If you touch one of them, you touch everybody. Unlike Africans, let's just be honest. You can beat the shit out of an African country. The next African country will do nothing about it. They will just watch. Yeah, are you doubting me? Please don't doubt me. You remember what happened in Libya? Do you remember what happened in Libya? Who destroyed Libya? Not the Africans. Who destroyed Libya under Gaddafi? It was America and France. They went to Libya, destroyed Libya because they didn't like Gaddafi. And none of the African nation left a finger saying, stop it. This is our continent. And please don't tell me it's because they didn't have the power to fight back. You don't need power to fight back if a strong man touches your mother, right? Do you need power to fight back if a very strong man touches your daughter or your brother? Or your mother or your sister? No, you fight. What do you say to yourself? Let him kill all of us, right? Because you deem they are dear enough for you. African people did not support Gaddafi. But Europeans, when they heard that their children, at least their descendants, were kicked off Zimbabwe, not even kicked off Zimbabwe, kicked off the lands they supposedly owned, they hit Zimbabwe with sanctions, some of the most horrendous sanctions ever. And they said the sanction is against the government, the undemocratic government, and they say it was against President Robert Mugabe. But I don't believe that. Okay, we don't believe that. But I'm going to tell you what. Okay, you say we're sanctioning the president because he's illegal, because he's undemocratic, because he's torturing people and stuff like that. Are you really sanctioning the president by cutting off oil, cutting off sugar, cutting off mealie meals, cutting off maize? Do you really think you're sanctioning a president of the Republic of Africa? African presidents are rich. They can never suffer from that. By you sanctioning the country, you are sanctioning the people of Zimbabwe. You are cutting the livelihood of these people. Okay, it's not the president you're sanctioning. And unfortunately, many years went, and some people believe their goal was to put pressure on the population, asphyxiate the population in a way that they cannot resist anymore, hoping that the population will stand up and fight their own president. That never occurred. That's never occurred. Now, many years after the departure of President Mugabe, because he's not alive anymore, Zimbabwe is still under sanctions. Yes. By the way, let me put it this way for you. I know many people don't know. Zimbabwe is the country that has the most literate people in Africa. Most Zimbabweans go to school. I know after the sanction, a lot of them went to South Africa looking for a better life because obviously when your country is not doing okay, what do? You try to go somewhere else. Try to make it for yourself. Many go illegally to South Africa, and most of the time they're not very much respected in South Africa, and I can understand. But Zimbabwe, when it comes to going to school, they are some of the best in Africa. In fact, President Mugabe was the most literate, the most qualified president in the world in terms of diplomas. He had about 5 degrees, five degrees or 5 master's degree. Not 100% sure. We need to double check that. President Mugabe. And it was the reason why his country was reduced to pure poverty. Again, fellas, is this correct? President Mugabe was one of the few presidents to stand for the rights of Africans. He came to the United Nations and say, we need to review the Security Council. You remember the Security Council? So Security Council is this program where 5 countries decide for the entirety of the world. Yes, these 5 countries, if they say yes, even if the rest of the countries say no, it's yes. If one of the 5 countries say no, even if the rest of the countries in the world say yes, it's no. So it's like they have more power than everybody else. These are United States of America, Britain, France, China, and Russia. These are 5 countries. It's like they are the super countries. They decide for everybody. So Mugabe said, no, I mean, how can we talk about Security Council in a situation where Africa is not represented? Who represents Africa in the Security Council? How can we talk about a free world, talk about democracy, if Africa is not represented? I mean, the man did a lot of negative things. Like some people believe he gave the land to the Zimbabweans that were never trained for the business. Meaning many Zimbabweans took the land of Zimbabwe, the land that was occupied by agriculture or farmers that were white. They took the land, but they mismanaged it. Many of them, because they did not have training. Let me say, most Africans, when they have business worth, perhaps, let me just give you a stupid example, $1 million. Instead of using the $1 million to run the business, they will perhaps use 900,000 to enrich their stomach, buy houses, buy cars, and try to run the business only with 100,000. So they will use 90% of the money for their own purpose and 10% with stupid things. So many people believe the reason why Zimbabwe failed in terms of reform, as the president planned it at the beginning, was because many Zimbabweans were reckless. They did not learn from the white man that occupied the land. I mean, this is not exclusive to Zimbabwe, not learning. Okay? Uganda went through the same thing. Uganda was run by Indians in the 1960s. Yes, the Indians came to Uganda via Kenya. How did they get to Kenya? The Indians came to Kenya when the British came to Kenya trying to build a railroad from Mombasa to Kampala. Mombasa is in Kenya. Kampala is the capital of Uganda. So the British wanted a way to get to, usually when they come to Africa, they will build very good infrastructure from the inside of the country to the port, because they want to steal and run. So they wanted to build a railroad from Mombasa to Kampala. And for some reason, I don't know why. You can tell me why. They decided to bring in Indians and not use African local people to build the railroad. Was it because they deemed Indians were more intelligent than Africans? I don't know. You tell me. Did the British think Indians were more smart, more reliable than Africans in building the railroad? I mean, you're in a continent, you see millions of people. Why don't you use them? Why do you have to bring some other people from another continent? Anyway, you let me know how you feel about that. So what happened was these Indian people built the railroad from Mombasa to Kampala. And what happened later on, when colonialism ended, the British left the continent, many Indians left the continent, and many of them remained in the continent. Many stayed in Kenya, some stayed in Uganda. Now, what happened later? The Indians were running the country because they had all the businesses. All the restaurants, the casino, and the businesses were run by the Indians. And a lot of locals, Ugandans, started working for the Indians. So these people come into your land, build railroad. Next thing, they are business owners and you start serving them. You become their employees. That was the reality of Uganda. When the President Idi Amin came into power, he chased them. I know you heard of Idi Amin, right? Yes, you've seen that movie when they portray him as an evil, brainless person. That's not the reality. Let me tell you something. As soon as you read a story where they're portraying an African president as a stupid, clueless, you need to start thinking the opposite. Yeah, because they're just trying to destroy your character. They're trying to destroy his character. So Idi Amin, as much as wasn't the smartest man, because he never really done school as it is in the West, not very much like that. It's very much self-taught. Idi Amin said to the Indians, you live in our country, but you run the economy. Okay, you run the economy, that's a good thing. Great. But why don't you invest the money into Uganda? Why are you sending money back to India? Why don't you teach Ugandans how to do business? Why don't you teach them the skill? Why do you just use them to do the hard work, hard labor? You don't teach them how to grow. That was the reason why Amin wasn't happy. And again, even though the Indians lived in Uganda, like Ugandans, they were very separated by separated from the local people. They had their own community apart in Uganda. I mean, Ugandans have many tribes, okay? It's Banyankole, Baganda, Batoro, many Ugandans many tribes in Uganda. How many tribes in Uganda? Okay, many tribes in Uganda. You can confirm with that. All these different tribes live together. But the Indians who called themselves Ugandan did not want to merge with these other tribes. They wanted to stay with their own community. They never interacted with them on a friendly level. It was boss and employee level. So you're going to clean, we're going to get paid, and you get out. Idi Amin said, you know what? You're getting out of my country because you don't want to be Ugandan the way Ugandans are. And he gave them 100 days. Was it 100 days? I don't know. They gave them time. You need to leave the country. And they were running away. Many of them left. Some went to Britain. And some Ugandans took over the businesses. What happened next? Fortunately, many fell. The idea of Idi Amin, was it wrong? No, I don't think it was wrong. The initial idea was good, but the application was not right. People were not up to the task. Same for Zimbabwe. Okay, Idi Amin was hit with sanctions and many things happened later. Same for Zimbabwe. So now we want to see a new era, a new thing. Now, my question is this. If these sanctions against Zimbabwe were just because they care about the Zimbabwean people, but they don't care about the government that supposedly dictatorship, oppressive. Why are the sanctions still in place? If that president that took the land is no more, why are the sanctions still in place? Why are the sanctions still in place? And let me remind you, a while back, Zimbabwe discovered a huge amount of lithium in the country. Lithium is a mineral that's necessary for the creation of cell phones and electric cars and many other things. As we all know now, we're moving toward a brand new world where a lot of people are going to use electric cars and a lot of technology that will require all this stuff. Even though the country was under sanction, businesses came to Zimbabwe asking to come and take lithium, to come and, mine lithium. What did the Zimbabwean government say to them? They say, if you want lithium, then come officially. Why don't you just remove the sanction since you sanctioned that? Remove the sanction, come get the lithium. They refuse to remove the sanction. They say, okay, then come build a plant here, a processing plant in Zimbabwe. Build a processing plant in Zimbabwe so that Zimbabwean people can learn the skill of lithium. So the Zimbabweans can acquire the money, get the tax. They didn't want to do that either, okay? And that's why the sanction continued. Obviously, with President Mnangagwa, they thought they were going to push their agenda on him and he was going to be okay with it. But he's also resistant. He's not accepting what is being told by the West. There's an interview of him talking to a journalist that came when he first came into power, first interview. They're asking him, oh, are you going to legalize, those, what it is? Are you going to legalize men being with other? They don't even ask him, how are you going to fix the country? What are your plans for the country? The first question is, are you going to militate? Are you going to fight for the right of men to be with other? Do you think Zimbabwean peoples right now need anything else besides getting the country economy running? Do you think the youth of Zimbabwe are worried about who get into their pants as compared to getting food every day, getting infrastructure, getting technology? Do you think people of Zimbabwe are worried about whose G-string is being worn by who, instead of worried about how to get the country running, how to get jobs and opportunities? Once again, President Emerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe, I know I murdered his name there, he has called for the removal of the illegal and unfair sanctions. These sanctions are unfair. I mean, how do you progress? So they block you from, actually the sanction is, it means your country cannot buy anything from another country that's affiliated with the West. You know how it runs. If America doesn't like you, everybody else, all these other countries that don't respect themselves, they all also don't like you. So it means if America doesn't like you, none of the other countries will do deal or business with you. So then it means again, you are being cut off SWIFT system. The SWIFT system is a system that allows you to send money to another country. From your bank account, sending money to your cousin in Jakarta. That's SWIFT. If you're not affiliated with SWIFT, if your bank is not affiliated with SWIFT that belongs to the Western nation, you cannot send money from your country or from Zimbabwe to another country via those stuff. That's how bad they're trying to make it for people. And obviously, when you push people around too long, what happens? They fight back. The Zimbabwean president has been looking to Russia now. And a while back, Russia donated a couple of helicopters to Zimbabwe, saying if you have any issues, as an ambulance, you can use helicopters for free. Do you think Zimbabwe is going to turn to the West again and beg for mercy, say, please forgive me? Very slowly, they're going to learn to live without the West. That's the reality of it. Thank you very much, fellas. It was a great pleasure. Let me know how you feel about this. Zimbabwe moving forward on its own way. Hopefully, in the future, they'll be respected the way they once were. God bless.